Hello, I'm Kerry from Living in Loveliness. We seem to have had a few connection errors with our internet, so my apologies. I'm a little later than I said I would be this afternoon. I'm aware that some of you are having problems downloading the PDF file from the website, so I thought perhaps it would be a little easier based on the feedback that you've been giving me in the group to do a live and to talk to you about the measurements, as that question seems to continue to come up in the group. So I'll keep this nice and simple. What you'll notice in the group this afternoon is I've put a photo album on there, and I've titled the photo album Headbands. So this is to make it really easy for you to see when you're going into the group what sizes you're working in and what we're looking for. So for this headband, it is a wide headband with the buttons on there. This is made from just 2 different pieces of fabric, keeping this even simpler than the version that I showed you on the tutorial to speed the process up, as a little bit of feedback is there's too many steps and it's a little bit complicated. So let's keep this nice and easy. Let's keep the measurements nice and simple, and I'll show you how to make it. So for this tutorial, you're going to need a few things. You'll need your fabric. I've gone for this fabulous bright fabric. I have to say that the Craft Cotton Company, I've been writing a blog for them for quite a few years now. They have been amazing. If you've been getting in touch on the page, I've been sending your addresses and they're sending fabric out. When there's more available, I will keep you updated, but for now there's no more available just now. You'll need your fabric. You need a 6.5 inch piece of 1/2 inch wide elastic, and that's for the back of the headband. You'll need 2 buttons. Now these need to be ideally between the size of a 1p and a 2p. I am rapidly running out of buttons, as I can see lots of people are. Just keep asking on your personal Facebook pages. That's what I can see that people are doing, and you're getting donations of box of buttons that perhaps people have been storing for a little while. You'll need a tape measure. You'll need a small safety pin. Not sure whether you can see that, a small safety pin. You'll need a pen. Mine's a heat erasable one, but it doesn't matter. You can just use a normal biro or pencil. You'll need a stitch unpicker just in case you go wrong. I'm hoping that's not going to happen while we're live. You'll need a needle and thread, and that is to sew your buttons on. Just make sure that you're doubling your thread and that you're knotting off on the end of your thread when you're sewing your buttons on. And you'll need a pair of scissors to cut your fabric. So keeping these to a reduced amount of fabric and a really simple technique for you. I will press my fabrics just because it's habit and I enjoy doing that, but this is your choice entirely whether you decide to press at the stages where I recommend it. So the 2 sizes of fabric that you need. So your first piece is for your actual headband. So it's slightly different to the template. The template that I put online has just got a curve on there. This isn't. This is just an oblong piece of fabric. It is 8 inches wide and 16 inches in length. So it's just one piece of fabric, 8 inches wide, 16 inch in length. Please don't worry about remembering this. I'm going to post really simple step-by-step instructions to the photo album in the group Sewing for our NHS, so you'll be able to see those measurements to refer back to. And then you'll need a piece of fabric. This is for the casing of your elastic. Now I've seen lots of people that are making the headbands, they're not bothering with this section, they're just sewing the elastic directly onto the headband. That's your choice entirely. You can absolutely do that if you want to, because this is another step. If you want to be speedy and you're limited on fabrics, skip this step completely and just attach your elastic in the same way I'm going to show you in a moment. Okay, so just pop these to one side for now. And the reason that you need your template, your pen, is to make these markings. And the reason that I'm doing this is to keep it as simple as I possibly can for you. So starting with your 16 inch piece of fabric, we're going to fold that in half, pattern facing. So pattern facing, if you don't know, simply means popping the pattern on top of the other pattern and folding it. So when you're looking at your fabric, you can see the wrong side of your fabric. That's really important here. And then what we're going to do, so using your tape measure, we're going to measure 1 inch. So this is your raw edge of your fabric, so your fabric where it's cut. We're going to measure from the edge of that fabric 1 inch in. We've got a little bobbly bit here on my tape measure, it's really cute. And we're going to draw a line. So it's approximately 1 inch in. And then we're going to do it from the other side as well, which is your folded side of your fabric. So again, we're going to measure 1 inch in. Okay, so let me just show you that. So I've measured 1 inch from your folded edge and I've drawn a pen mark, and I've measured 1 inch from your raw edge and I've drawn another black pen mark. I'm going to do that on the opposite side as well. In fact, I've skipped ahead and I forgot I've done that. So that's exactly the same. So from the raw edge into the fabric, 1 inch, draw a pen mark. From the folded edge into the fabric, 1 inch, and draw a pen mark. And the reason for those pen marks is in a moment we're going to slide the elastic into that gap, but it's also going to create a turning gap for sewing this inside out. So what I'm going to do now, you'll need some pins as well, is just slide the pins out. Now I'll say this in every tutorial, I just find that this step helps me and it'll help people that are new to sewing, especially if you're doing a production line and making lots of these in one sitting, if you like, or if you're doing step by step and you're sewing them over a few days, to remind you. So this is our arrow and we're pointing it to the area that we're sewing. So we are going to be sewing along this side. I'm turning the fabric and we're going to sew along the full length there. So remembering that was 16 inches. And we're just sliding a few pins out. I tend to do a few pins, 4 fingers, few pins, a pin, 4 fingers and a pin. We've got a little bent one there. And then just popping these into the corner as well. So as I do in each of my tutorials, I'm leaving the pins a good finger space back from the edge, from the raw edge of our fabric, and that's to speed up the process so we don't need to remove the pins as we're sewing, we can sew along. So the reason for these pen marks, going back to that, what we're going to do now is sit this on the side of our sewing machine. We're starting at the folded edge and sewing to that black first line, reverse stitching. We're then going to release the thread and tease it out. We're not worrying about trimming the thread, and I will show you how to do this in a moment. We're going to start at that second black line, reverse stitch, sew to the corner, pivot our fabric and sew along the full length. When we get to the third corner, again, we're going to pivot the fabric, sew to the third black line, and we're reverse stitching up to that black line there. And finally, skip ahead to that fourth black line, reverse stitch and sew to the end. Because we've got the fold in the fabric, it will speed up this process as well. So let me just show you how to do that on the machine. Okay, so as with every tutorial, I'm always working with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm sliding the raw edge of the fabric up to the side of my sewing machine foot, and I'm dropping the presser foot onto the fabric. I'm going to start by reverse stitching. Just release any thread to stop that from knotting up, and we're sewing to that first black line and reverse stitching. We're now going to lift up the presser foot, tease out the cotton, so just release a little bit of cotton, and, excuse me, second black line, drop our presser foot, and we're going to reverse stitch to that black line. When we get to the corner, we're going to drop our needle into the fabric, lift up the presser foot, and pivot the fabric, realigning the raw edge of the fabric with the side of the machine foot. Dropping the presser foot back down, sliding your cliff hand, holding onto the edge of your sewing machine so your fabric can butt up to your hand, and allowing the fabric to feed through the machine and sewing along the full length of the headband. When we get to that next corner, we're going to drop our needle into the fabric, lift up the presser foot, turn your fabric again, realigning the raw edge with the side of your machine foot and dropping your presser foot. So into that third black line and reverse stitching. Lift your presser foot, tease out a little bit of cotton, skip along to your fourth black line, drop your needle into your fabric, start by reverse stitching and sew to the folded edge and complete that section by reverse stitching on the edge. So it's important now to trim away any excess cotton. That will just stop it getting tangled up. As I've said in all of my previous tutorials, if you leave your pins pointing out, it makes removing your pins super speedy, which is what we're looking for at the moment. And what we want to do now is to just trim away any excess thread and this joining thread that you'll have here. So just take that off. I just took that to one side for now, and the same on the opposite side as well. And now we've got that oblong sewn the wrong way. What we're going to do now is poke your finger through one of the ends, doesn't matter which one. In fact, let's just trim these corners first so we get a nice finish. So where we've got these corners, just working about 1/2 inch from the raw edge, we're going to angle our scissors and just trim. Making sure that we're not coming into contact with the seam, but that will just give us a nice finish. And repeat that on your second corner as well. Okay, so we're going to reverse, almost like a little tube at the moment. We're poking our finger in, pushing it to the furthest point of our headband, pinching your fabric on your finger and your thumb, and pushing the inside of the fabric through that hole. As you pull this out, that will feed through nicely. Because we've left that inch, it's going to make sure we get a nice corner on there as well. So we're now just poking in and pushing out each of those 4 corners. Because of the way we've trimmed our fabric, you won't need to use a tool to push this out to get it spot on, but of course you could if you wanted to. So we just do that on those second set of corners now. And just because it's a bit of a habit, you can skip this part if you want to. We're just going to press the fabric and get a nice finish on there. We are gifting these. They are lovely, happy fabrics, so we want them to look beautiful when we're handing them over as well. Now, the reason that it's definitely worth pressing these is where you've got that little gap now. Your elastic is going to fit in there in a moment, but we want to make sure that fold is just tucked in and in line with the edge of your fabric just here. If it's not, just go back and do that to save it tangling up at a later stage. So just do that on both sides. What's quite nice about this pattern is you are repeating your steps. Okay, so we'll just pop that to one side for now while we look at the elastic. So your elastic piece is 10.5 inches in length and 3 inches wide. So you've got 3 inches on your shorter side and 10.5 inches. Then you've got your 6.5 inch piece of 1/2 inch of wide elastic. You can use thinner elastic if you want to, and remember you could completely skip this step. So if you're going to skip this step, let me just show you. At this point you would simply slide this elastic into that little hole there and sew across the top, and the same on the other side. Okay, and I'll show you how you would complete that, but I'm going to show you with a casing. So, using the casing fabric, what we want to do with your tape measure again, we're going to measure from the raw edge of your fabric 1 inch in, and just put a little black pen mark there for now. And that's really important. Then with your elastic, what we're going to do is sit that onto the fabric, so onto the wrong side of the fabric, slide a pin through your elastic and your fabric. And I always leave, let me just turn that around, 1/4 inch overhanging. And the reason for that is when this is being put on and off of the recipient's head, it's going to apply pressure to the elastic. So by leaving that, it just means that that's not going to tease out. So what we're going to do now is just secure that elastic in place, lining the sewing machine foot up with the edge of the fabric. So not your elastic, it's on the edge of the fabric. Drop your presser foot, and we're going to sew across that elastic, and I'm going to reverse stitch, sew forward, and reverse stitch and sew forward. So I've gone across that elastic 5 times. Had to think then. Gone across that elastic 5 times, so that's really secure in there now, and I'm going to release the pin. So you can see your elastic is a lot shorter than your casing just here. So your next stage now is to iron your fabric. So we're folding this raw edge, the one closest to the elastic, and we're folding that raw edge in so it's now in line with the side of the elastic. Okay, and we're going to press that. Again, you could skip past the pressing stage and you could just fold and pin it. And we're just going to sew that. But I just find by ironing these into place, it makes life much easier. And then we're going to fold the other side a good 1/2 inch in. And we're just guessing this. We're not getting it absolutely spot on. We're just guessing. You can measure and mark if you so wish. So on both sides now, we've got the raw edges folded in a good 1/2 inch. So when we fold this over now, that's going to create our elastic casing. But before we go on to that step, what we want to do is just attach a safety pin. So if we attach a safety pin, pushing it through our elastic and back out through the elastic, if we tuck this elastic, or just fold this elastic back out of the way so it's not getting tucked in or sewn into the fabric, we're now going to fold that fabric and align those 2 folded edges. Again, you could skip the pinning part if you want to, but I'm going to show you using your pins, especially if you're new to sewing. Pinning your fabric will really help and stop any frustration when it's not going exactly the way you want it to. So as always, I'm using my arrows, my pins, to point along the side that I'm sewing, which is where that folded edge is, and I'm now going to sew that into position. I'll just bring the machine back to me, and I'm sitting this on the edge of the machine, aligning the edge of the folded edge with the side of my sewing machine foot, resting my hand on the side of the sewing machine. Just start by reverse stitching, it's just really good practice, and then sew along the full edge and reverse stitch when you get to the end. Okay, so we're going to remove the pins and trim away all our excess cotton, just so this isn't getting tangled up as we're sewing in a moment. Because we've sewn the elastic into place, we haven't got to fight with the elastic. What we're going to do now is hold on to this safety pin. We're bringing it back and pushing it through that little casing that we've now created. And because we've sewn the elastic into place, we haven't got to worry about holding on to both ends because one's already secured into place. So as we're pulling this through, you'll notice that the fabric starts to bunch up. Before it starts to bunch up, what we're going to do, when that elastic is flat, just pop this back onto the machine so my elastic is halfway through. I'm just going to sew across there one more time, reverse stitching. And there's absolutely no way, because of the amount of stitches we've put onto the side of the elastic, that that's going to come off. I'm going to pinch onto my safety pin and then push this through, all the way through. Keep pinching that fabric back until we get to the other end of our casing. So your safety pin is now popping out. We're going to remove the safety pin and just bring that casing back across, making sure your elastic is overhanging by a good 1/4 inch. And we're sewing this now to secure that other side of the elastic in place. And we're just going to go across there again 5 times. 2 or 3 times is absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. So now we've got the elastic in that casing there, and that'll be nice and comfortable on the back of the head as well. What we're going to do next, where we've left those gaps, so we've got a good 1.5 inch gap in there. Our casing is about 1 inch wide. We're just sitting that inside, so pushing that through the little hole, and we're going to pin this into position. And we're going to work on one side at a time, just to make life super easy for ourselves. So I've popped that in, I've pinned through, and I'm now going to sew just across the edge of this fabric here. Let's just get the bobbin back out. So all I'm doing is just sewing that to secure it in place. Now lining this up on your machine, I'm lining it up towards the edge of the headband itself, and I'm just simply going to sew across the elastic just to hold that in place. You can reverse stitch if you want to, but I'm not going to worry about that just now because we're going to sew across there again in a moment. So I'm just trimming that excess thread, and if I bring that to the camera you should be able to see that I've only just sewn across that elastic. And now bringing the other end of the elastic, making sure there's no twists in my headband, and I'm pushing this into the, let me just turn that around, pushing this into that second hole. And again, I'm going to slide the pin. So I'm pushing that in. I can feel through the fabric, it's a good 1/2 inch tucked inside the fabric. Sliding a pin, pointing it to the area that I'm sewing. Now this time we want to make sure that the elastic isn't getting caught up, so we're sliding this under our machine, tucking our headband back behind the machine here, lining up the edge of the headband with the side of the fabric, and I'm sewing just to secure. You can reverse stitch, but you don't need to at this stage. And so now I've got the elastic secured into the headband. Because this is quite wide and it's not got the curve to it, you can do this with the template that I've put online as well. I've seen in the group that some people are folding these over, which is a lovely idea. The reason that the headbands, in case you're wondering, the reason that the headbands are so wide, these particular headbands are being made for anybody that is wearing a visor, because what the feedback is not only are their ears sore from the pressure of the elastic on the face masks, but the front of the heads are sore as well because of where the visor's sitting, especially for such long shifts. So these particularly will be great for anybody who's out there wearing the visors. So you've got your headband, you've got your elastic, and what we're going to do now, decide which is your inside, and we're simply folding the edge across to bring that to the halfway point of the elastic. And then we're going to bring the second side across to the halfway point of the elastic. Let me just hold that in place. Okay, it's all pink on pink, and sorry I'm wearing a pink cardigan, that's probably not helping. But if I just show you there, that's where the 2 folds are coming, which is the halfway point of your elastic. Once you've folded those in place, what we're going to do is slide pins through just to secure those into position. And we're going to repeat on the opposite side as well. So just run through your hand, make sure that the headband isn't twisted, because that's when we'd need our stitch unpicker. And we're folding the 2 edges, so we're coming from the edge into the centre and again into the centre again. So we've got that nice fold on there. And we're just going to push through our fabric here. We're going to return this back to the sewing machine, pop this underneath, make sure this is flat. Pop this onto the sewing machine, again aligning the fold of your fabric with the side of your sewing machine foot, drop in your presser foot, start by reverse stitching and sewing all the way across to the end and reverse stitching to complete that side of your headband. We'll trim all the cottons in a moment. We're going to repeat on this side as well. So the fold is sitting flat on top of the machine. Dropping this under the presser foot, so the presser foot is aligned with the edge of the headband. We're going to start by reverse stitching and sewing across to the end of the headband and reverse stitching again. And let's just take that off the machine for the last time. And now what we're going to do is remove our pins and trim away all that excess thread. So actually when you follow the steps in this tutorial, whilst there seems lots of steps, once you've got the hang of doing one, you'll see that this is very, very simple to sew together. Myself personally, what I tend to do is do a bit of a production line. So I will cut all the fabric, and then I'll sew all of the headbands, and then I'll sew all of the casings, and then I would then move on to put all the elastics in the back. And it'd be nice if you mixed up your fabrics if you've got them. So you can see there that we've got this lovely wide headband. It's actually finishing up at about 3.5 inches. So that's a nice size to sit on the front of the head. And then this is also sitting on the back of the head, and you've got quite a lot of elastic on there. But what's quite nice about tucking those corners in is this is sitting neatly behind our ears. So the last thing to do, of course, the most important thing here is actually the buttons on the headbands. So you need 2 buttons, about a 2p size. I've got 2 different ones. My button stash is reducing. I've got lots of really small buttons. So I've got one that's just a little bit bigger than a 2p and one that's about a 2p size. It does not matter if your headbands have different size buttons on there. And then we'll need our needle and thread. So again, using your tape measure, we're going to measure 1 inch in. So we're measuring 1 inch from the edge of the fabric here, not your headband. 1 inch from the edge of your fabric. And then we're going to mark up in the centre a black dot. I can see lots of your messages popping up. I will respond to you individually when I come offline. I'm trying to just focus on doing the tutorials. I'm aware that our group now has over 600 people in there, all waiting for simple tips and techniques how to make these projects. So I will respond to you each individually. You can imagine my messenger is having hundreds of messages, so please bear with me. I'm doing my best to keep up with you, but you're sewing very fast. So just to remind you there, let's make that a little bit bigger. I'll put a big dot on there just so you can see. So from the fold of your fabric, I've measured 1 inch up and I've just popped a little black dot onto there. Now what we want to do is we don't want to sew those flaps, so we're just going to move that flap out of the way, pop our button so it's resting on top of that black dot, and feel through, make sure it's not tangling up in your fabrics here. Work from the back, so work from the inside of your headband, and then we're going to sew the buttons on. So as it's equally as important to make sure these buttons are secure, so we want to sew through the holes of the buttons at least 10 times to make sure that those buttons are secure, because these masks are perhaps going to be going off and on. It is important, so just covering what fabric. I am using cotton fabric. What I'm doing with my fabric is pre-washing at 60 degrees and making sure that the fabric can basically tolerate that wash. And once you know that, then you know that the fabric that you're working with is right. I know that that question keeps coming up. I can't imagine these headbands are going to last for really long periods of time, so we need hundreds of these. If you've got facilities to sew, if you've got time, fabric, buttons and the skill to do this, then we would really appreciate your support. If you haven't and you want to get involved, then you could absolutely donate some fabric, you could donate some buttons. We are desperate for buttons. Elastic, we're desperate for elastic as well. And we are looking for coordinators to coordinate with a contact in the hospital to make sure we can get these out. Remember to keep your distance when you're doing so. So just going back to what we're doing now, I've sewn through that button at least 10 times, and we want to knock the button off at least 3 times. So I'm pushing my needle through the fabric and I'm working on the inside of the headband, just making sure these little flaps aren't getting caught up in there. I'm leaving a little loop and I'm pushing the needle through and pulling that in nice and tight, and I'm going to repeat that 3 times to make sure that button is really secure. So leaving your loop, tucking your needle through your loop and knotting off that cotton, and then trimming away your excess thread there. So if you're just joining us and really all you've come to find out is the sizes of your fabric, the fabric for the casing for your elastic here on the back is 10.5 inches in length by 3 inches wide, and then this piece of fabric that we're folding to double is 16 inches in length by 8 inches in width. So I really hope that that's helpful to you. I'm just going to go ahead and sew this second button on and make sure this is really secure. If you are getting involved in the group, then you know we really appreciate you. I'm having some lovely messages back from people who are receiving the collections, and they really are so grateful for your time and your resources and your skills as well. So know that you are appreciated, and you know what we're doing is really invaluable. The wash bags, so if you feel like this might be a little bit too fiddly for you, then you can go ahead and you can make wash bags. We have been contacted by paramedics, so lots of paramedics who now need wash bags, and they need those wash bags larger than the ones that we've been making. So I will come back on and I will do another tutorial. I'm finding that the tutorials are helping you more so than having the paper patterns. So if there's anything that you need help with and I can do a quick tutorial for you, please do let me know. I'm happy to do that while we pick up momentum and we start making these. If you've got a machine and you want to get involved, then please get involved, because you know, I keep getting messages now saying, have we made enough? Do we need any more? We are working with teams of coordinators and machinists up and down the country, and we need hundreds, if not thousands, of headbands and bags, and there are other accessories that are going to be needed as well. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that this tutorial is helping you. Please bear with me for a little while. I will post the measurements into the group. If you're unsure or if you see somebody asking, please direct them to the photo album that is called Headbands, and I'll pop all the information in there. Stay safe, enjoy the beautiful sunshine. I think we're going to pop outside now and enjoy the sunshine, and I will see you no doubt live for a tutorial. If you've got any questions, pop them onto this thread and I will respond to you individually when I get time to do so. Thank you very much for your support. Enjoy the rest of your day. Lots of love. Bye bye now.